Welcome back, friends, to another session of finite element methods for fluid mechanics. We have looked at the finite element formulations for the toy problems, the linear heat conduction and then the linear elastostatics. And one of the things that we talked about are the finite element functions, the interpolation functions. So, today we want to elaborate on them. How do we choose these finite element functions or the basis functions? Finite element interpolation functions. So, let us first begin with one dimension, and we talked about linear, in fact it was piecewise linear. Finite element space. We propose that we had two domains, an x domain in which we had these so called nodes. A typical node was given as the location was x a, then the next one was x a plus 1, x a minus 1 and so on. And we actually mapped this to a xi domain, and here the coordinates were minus 1 to plus 1. So, each element, each of these elements was actually mapped to this plane, and we had a mapping vice versa. So, I can talk about that given an x, what is the xi if x is known, and likewise if the x is known, what is the xi. And we were able to come up with the so called shape functions, and what we found out is the following. We said that if I have UH as my discrete form of the unknown u, then I can write this for an element in terms of xi as summation n a of xi, these are the basis functions, times d a e. I am sure you remember this representation, and a goes from 1 through NEN. For this case of linear finite element space, NEN is 2. So, therefore, this explicitly comes down to N1 of xi times D1e plus N2 of xi D2e. The understanding is that I have my unknowns here, which are dA, dA plus 1, dA minus 1, but when I talk about an element E, so I am talking about element E, then I talk about the two local nodes that make it, the left node and the right node, and this is the domain that then I talk about. So, this is A equal to 1 and this is A equal to 2, NEN being 2. So, I am saying that if I want to represent u inside this element, because it is a linear finite element space, so I am going to do that with the help of the values d1 and d2 at these two nodes, which are actually these nodal values, okay, in the global coordinates, and I will use these shape functions n1 and n2. And let me recall for you what these shape functions are. N1 of xi was given as half of 1 minus xi, and N2 of xi is given as half of 1 plus xi. So, in fact, if I plot them, they look something like this. So, if this is my xi, this is -1, this is +1, then this is the first shape function n1. It takes a value +1 at xi equal to -1, and n2 takes a value +1 at xi equal to +1, and n1 actually goes to 0 at xi equal to 1, and n2 goes to 0 at xi equal to -1. So, in fact, they satisfy this property that if I want to look at xi A at a node xi B, then this is delta A B. Okay. And I can map each and every element to the xi domain. So, I can loop through all the elements and map each element into the xi coordinates and do exactly this mapping for u. All right. The question is, how did we come up with these values of n1 and n2? And the answer is that we actually used a linear mapping. So, what we wanted to do is, we wanted this node to be mapped to x A and the second node to be mapped to x A plus 1, and resulting we wanted it should be a linear mapping. Okay. So, any time I want to ask myself what is a certain value of x for this value of xi, I wanted a linear mapping for that, and that is how we derived these n1 and n2. So, in other words, what we have also done is the following. We are saying that not only is UH represented in terms of these shape functions and the unknowns, in fact, x also, if I want to write down it in terms of xi, can be written as summation A goes from 1 through NEN NA of xi x A E. And here the understanding is that x A E are the global coordinates of the local node numbers for that element. So, you will notice that x 1 E is actually x A and x 2 E is x A plus 1. In fact, some time ago in one of the sessions, we had found out what these mappings are. There were explicit expressions for x as a function of xi and also for xi as a function of x. And you can go back through that material and convince yourself that indeed this is what we are using. So, I would like you to focus on this statement and this statement. We are using the same shape functions to represent the mesh as well as the unknown. Such a representation is known as through isoparametric elements. These are very special elements where I use the same shape function. So, x xi is summation n A xi x A E, the sum is over 1 through NEN, and likewise UH xi is A going from 1 through NEN, NA xi, this is D A E. So, I am using the same mapping for the mesh as well as for the unknown. It could have been different in principle. So, I could have used, for example, linear interpolation for my coordinates, this mapping, and it could have been quadratic for my unknowns, or vice versa, that I could have had a quadratic mapping for the mesh and a linear mapping for my unknowns, and then it would not be isoparametric. But we are going to stick with isoparametric representation for the purpose of this course, because this has some special properties which I will talk about very shortly. Alright, so this is what we did in one dimension. What can we do in higher dimensions? So let us talk about now the 2 dimensions. And I want to give you an example of the bilinear finite element. 4 noded. Okay. So these are 4 noded quadrilaterals. Let me draw for you a picture in the xy domain. So let us take a typical 4 noded element. So let me say these are node numbers 1, 2, 3 and 4 of a certain 4 noded element, and let me term this domain as omega e. I am going to write down their coordinates as x1 e, y1 e, this one is x2 e, y2 e, this one is x3 e, y3 e, and this one I am going to call as x4 e, y4 e. I would like to map this element to a template, and that would be in the xi x, in the xi eta domain. So just like I did in one dimension, I want to generalize that to 2 dimension. So let this be xi, this is eta, and I am going to map this to a bi-unit square. So the coordinates of, so let us say these are again the 4 nodes 1 through 4, and the coordinates of these are -1, -1, this one is 1, -1, this is 1, 1 and -1, 1. I would like to map find a mapping xi, so that if you give me the x coordinate of any point inside this element, I should be able to find what is the xi eta coordinate corresponding in this domain. And likewise the inverse mapping would be that if I want to find out the x given the xi. So the notation that I am using is that x actually denotes a vector of the scalars x and y coordinates, and my xi denotes xi and eta. Okay, so I am going to use these vector notations, as well as I will use interchangeably the scalar notation. So the plan is that once I make a grid in 2 dimensions, so I have the entire IEN array, I go to element number E, I know what the local node numbers corresponding to the global node numbers are, so I know their coordinates, and each of these elements is mapped to exactly the same bi-unit square. Okay. So we are going to call this as the bi-unit square, and sometimes we also refer to it as the parent domain. And this one, of course, we are going to call that as the global domain, because it is in global coordinates. What I really want to use this mapping for is the following. I would like that x given a xi eta. So if you give me the xi eta coordinates of a certain point here, I would like to know what is the corresponding x coordinate, and similarly the y coordinate, and these are going to be given as summation a goes from 1 through NEN, the shape function NA, which are going to depend on xi and eta, and x a e. So I am simply generalizing the definition that I have used in one dimension. Now I am using it for 2 dimensions, and later I will generalize it to 3 dimensions as well. Likewise, the y coordinate I would like to write as NEN, NA as a function of eta y a e. In fact, I can combine this and write it in a more compact notation that x for a given xi is a going from 1 through NEN, NA as a function of xi, and here I am simply going to write x a e. So this is a more compact vector notation, which in fact includes both these statements. And needless to say that for this element I am using NEN is 4, because I am using 4 noded elements. So let us ask ourselves, what could the mapping be between x and the xi? So let me number this equation as 1 and this as 2, and let me ask myself a question: what could be the structure of this mapping given by equation 1? And what I can see is that x eventually, if it is a function of xi and eta, because I have 4 nodes, so I should be able to determine 4 constants, and perhaps it will look something like this: C0 plus C1 xi plus C2 eta. So this is linear in xi, linear in eta, this is the constant value, and I can possibly include another constant C3. And now you will realize that the coefficient of that, if I use a quadratic xi square or a quadratic eta square, then I do not have a linear mapping anymore. In fact, the right thing to here to do would be to use the bilinear term. So this is the bilinear term. In fact, you can see right away that if I was to use a triangular element with NEN equal to 3, so here I have used NEN equal to 4, but if this was a triangular element, then the mapping would allow me, because I have only 3 vertices now, it would only allow me 3 constants, and I would get exactly a linear mapping. But because I have 4 nodes, now I am allowed to have the bilinear term as well, and likewise I can get the y equation also. So maybe I can write it down that y of xi eta is given as d0 plus d1 xi plus d2 eta plus d3 xi eta. How do I determine these constants? So what are the value of these constants? It turns out that I can generate equations. Okay. What I already know is that at node 1 my xi and eta coordinates are -1 and -1, and if I substitute those values of xi and eta, then I should generate here the x coordinate for this first node x1e. Similarly, I can write another equation for y1e, and then I can repeat that exercise for second, third and fourth nodes. So I can use these to actually get these constants C0 through C3 and D0 to D3. Okay. And once I have these constants, then I can recast them as equations 1 and 2, and in fact I can determine what my NAs are. So, I leave that as an exercise for you, and I will simply write down what these NAs are. So, what we will find is these NAs of xi and eta, these can be found by evaluating the constants. Let me give you what these shape functions are, and then we will study a few of their properties.